as described by Sukadeva Goswami, is the highest perfection of life. The exclusive purpose of Srimad Bhagavatam is to convince the conditioned soul to execute such surrender to the Lord and go back home, back to Godhead. Text 2. Translation. O King, give up the animalistic mentality of thinking. Heading is Sukadeva Goswami's final instructions to Maharaj. Should I continue? Okay. Text 2. Translation. O King, give up the animalistic mentality of thinking, quote, I am going to die, unquote. Unlike the body, you have not taken birth. There was not a time in the past when you did not exist, and you are not about to be destroyed. Purport. At the end of the first canto, 19th chapter, 15th verse, King Parikshit stated, Tam mohapa jatam pratiyantu vitta ganga cha devi dhrita chittam ishe vijo pasrishta kuhakas pataksho dastav alam gayata vishnu gataha. O Brahmanas, just accept me as a completely surrendered soul, and let Mother Ganges, the representative of the Lord, also accept me in that way. For I have taken the lotus feet of the Lord into my heart. Let the snake bird or whatever magical thing the Brahmana created bite me at once. I only desire that you all continue singing the deeds of Lord Vishnu. Unquote. Even before hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, King Parikshit was a Mahabhagavata, a great and a pure devotee of Lord Krishna. There was actually no animalistic fear of death within the king. But for our sake, Sukadeva Goswami is speaking very strongly to his disciple, just as Lord Krishna speaks strongly to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. Text 3. Translation. You will not take birth again in the form of your sons and grandsons, like a sprout taking birth from a seed and then generating a new seed. Rather, you are entirely distinct from the material body and its paraphernalia, in the same way that fire is distinct from its fuel. Sometimes one dreams of being reborn as a son of one's son, in the hope of perpetually remaining in the same material family. As stated in Shruti Mantra, Pita Putrena Putraman Yoni Yono. Quote, a father has a father in his son, because he may take birth as his own grandson. Unquote. The purpose of Srimad Bhagavatam is spiritual liberation and not the foolish prolonging of the illusory bodily identification. That is clearly stated in this verse. Text 4. Translation. In a dream, one can see his own head being cut off and thus understand that his actual self is standing apart from the dream experience. Similarly, while awake, one can see that his body is a product of 5 material elements. Therefore, it is to be understood that the actual self, the soul, is distinct from the body it observes and is unborn and immortal. Text 5. Translation. When a pot is broken, the portion of sky within the pot remains as the element sky, just as before. In the same way, when the gross and subtle bodies die, the living entity within resumes his spiritual identity. Text 6. Translation. The material bodies, qualities and activities of the spirit soul are created by the material mind. that mind is itself created by the illusory potency of the Supreme Lord. And thus the soul assumes material existence. Text 7. Translation. A lamp functions as such only by the combination of its fuel, vessel, wick and fire. Similarly, material life, based on soul's identification with the body, is developed and destroyed by the workings of material goodness, passion and ignorance, which are constituent elements of the body. Text 8. Translation. The soul within the body is self-luminous and is separate from the visible gross body and invisible subtle body. It remains as the fixed basis of changing bodily existence, just as the ethereal sky is the unchanging background of the material transformation. Therefore, the soul is endless and without material comparison. Text 9. Translation. My dear king, by constantly meditating upon the Supreme Lord, Vasudeva, and by applying clear and logical intelligence, you should carefully consider your true self and how it is situated within the material body. Text 10. Translation. The snake bird, the Takshaka, sent by the curse of the Brahmana, will not burn your true self. The agents of death will never burn such a master of the self as you, for you have already conquered all the dangers on your path back to Godhead. Purport. The real death is covering of one's eternal Krishna consciousness. For the soul, material illusion is just like death. But Parikshit Maharaj had already destroyed all those dangers that threaten one's spiritual life, such as lust, envy, and fear. Sukadeva Goswami here congratulates the great saintly king, who, as a pure devotee of Lord Krishna, homeward bound to spiritual sky, was far beyond the reach of death. Text 11 and 12. Translation. You should consider, quote, I am non-different from the Absolute Truth, the Supreme Abode, and that Absolute Truth, the Supreme Destination, is non-different from me, unquote. Thus resigning yourself to the Supreme Soul, who is free from all material misidentifications, you will not even notice the snake bird Takshaka when he approaches with his poison-filled fangs and bites your foot. Nor will you see your dying body or the material world around you, because you will have realized yourself to be separate from them. Text 13. Translation. Beloved King Parikshit, I have narrated to you the topics you should originally inquire about. The passing of Lord Hari, the Supreme Soul of the universe. Now what more do you wish to hear? Purport. In his commentary to his text, Srila Jiva Goswami has elaborately demonstrated by citing many Bhagavatam verses the exalted devotional position of King Parikshit, who was fully determined to fix his mind upon Lord Krishna and go back home, back to Godhead. So, Guru, that ends the 5th chapter. Should I continue? Oh. Chapter 6. Maharaj Parikshit passes away. This chapter describes Maharaj Parikshit's attainment of liberation. Maharaj Janamajaya's performance of sacrifice for killing all snakes, the origin of the Vedas, and Srila Vedvyasa's dividing of the Vedic literature. After hearing the words of Sri Sukadeva, Maharaj Parikshit stated that by having listened to the Bhagavatam, which is the compendium of the Puranas, and which is full of nectarian pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Uttama Shloka, Parikshit had attained the transcendental position of fearlessness and oneness with the Supreme. His ignorance had been dispelled, and by the mercy of Sri Sukadeva, he had gained sight of the supremely auspicious personal form of God. namely the personality of Godhead, Sri Hari. As a result, he had cast aside all fear of death. Sri Parikshit Maharaj then begged Sukadeva Goswami to permit him to fix his heart upon the lotus feet of Lord Hari and give up his life. Granting this permission, Sri Sukadeva rose and departed. Subsequently, Maharaj Parikshit, free from all doubts, sat down in yogic posture and merged himself in meditation upon the Super Soul. Then the snake bird Takshaka, arriving in the disguise of a Brahmana, bit him, and the body of the saintly king immediately burned to ashes. Janamejaya, the son of Parikshit, became very angry when he received the news of his father's death. And he began a sacrificial performance for the purpose of destroying all the snakes. Even though Takshaka received protection from Indra, he nevertheless became attracted by the mantras and was about to fall into the fire. Seeing this, Brihaspati, the son of Angira Rishi, came and advised Maharaj Janamejaya that Takshaka could not be killed because he had drunk the nectar of the demigods. Furthermore, Angira said that all living entities must enjoy the fruits of their past activities. Therefore, the king should give up his sacrifice. Janamejaya was thus convinced by the words of Brihaspati and stopped his sacrifice. Thereafter, Sutta Goswami, in response to questions from Sri Shaunaka, described the divisions of the Vedas. From the heart of the topmost demigod Brahma came the subtle transcendental vibration, and from this subtle sound vibration arose the syllable Om, greatly potent and self-luminous. Using this Omkara, Lord Brahma created the original Vedas and taught them to his sons Marichi and others, who are all saintly leaders of the Brahman community. This body of Vedic knowledge was handed down through the disciplic succession of spiritual masters until the end of Dwapar Yuga, when Lord Vyasadeva divided into 4 parts and instructed various schools of sages in these 4 sankatas. When the sage Yajnavalkya was rejected by his spiritual master, he has to give up all the Vedic mantras he had received from him. To obtain new mantras of the Yajurveda, Yajnavalkya worshipped the Supreme Lord in the form of Sun God. Sri Suryadev subsequently fulfilled his prayer. Text 1. Translation. Sutta Goswami said, after hearing all that was narrated to him by the self-realized and equipoised Sukadev, the son of Vyasadeva, Maharaj Parikshit humbly approached his lotus feet. Bowing his head down upon the sage's feet, the king, who had lived his entire life under the protection of Lord Vishnu, folded his hands in supplication and spoke as follows. Purport. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, some of the sages present while Sukadev was instructing King Parikshit were impersonalists, philosophers. Thus, the word Samena indicates that in the previous chapter, Sukadeva Goswami had spoken the philosophy of self-realization in a way pleasing to such intellectual yogis. Text 2. Translation. Maharaj Parikshit said, I have now achieved the purpose of my life because a great and merciful soul like you has shown such kindness to me. You have personally spoken to me this narration of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari, who is without beginning or end. Text 3. Translation. I do not consider it at all amazing that these great souls such as yourself, whose minds are always absorbed in the infallible personality of Godhead, show mercy to the foolish conditioned souls, tormented as we are by the problems of material life. Text 4. I have heard from you the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the perfect summary of all the Puranas and which perfectly describes the Supreme Lord Uttama Shloka. Text 5. Translation. My Lord, now I have no fear of Takshaka or any other living being or even the repeated deaths because I have absorbed myself in that purely spiritual absolute truth which you have revealed and which destroys all fear. Text 6. Translation. O Brahmana, please give me permission to resign my speech and the functions of all my senses unto Lord Adhokshara. Allow me to absorb my mind, purified of lusty desires, within him and thus give up my life. Purport. Sukadeva Goswami asked King Parikshit, what more do you wish to hear? Now the king replies that he has perfectly understood the message of Srimad Bhagavatam and that he is ready, without further discussion, to go back home, back to Godhead. Text 7. Translation. You have revealed to me that which is most auspicious, the supreme personal feature of the Lord. I am now fixed in knowledge and self-realization, and my ignorance has been eradicated. Text 8. Translation. Suta Goswami said, thus requested, the saintly son of Srila Vyasadeva gave his permission to King Parikshit, and then, after being worshipped by the king and all the sages present, Sukadeva departed from that place. Text 9 and 10. Translation. Maharaj Parikshit then sat down on the bank of the Ganges upon a seat made of darba grass and with the tips of his stalks facing east and turned himself towards the north. Having attained the perfection of yoga, he experienced full self-realization and was free of material attachment and doubt. The saintly king settled his mind within his spiritual self by pure intelligence and proceeded to meditate upon the supreme absolute truth. His life has ceased to move and he became as stationary as a tree. Text 11. Translation. O learned Brahmanas, the snake bird Takshaka, who had been sent by the angry son of a Brahmana, was going to the king to kill him when he saw Kashyapa Muni on the path. Text 12. Translation. Takshaka flattered Kashyapa by presenting him with valuable offerings and thereby stopped the sage, who was expert in counteracting poison, from protecting Maharaj Parikshit. Then the snake bird, who could assume any form he wished, disguised himself as a Brahman, approached the king and bit him. Purport. Kashyapa could counteract the poison of Takshaka and demonstrated this power by bringing a palm tree back to life after Takshaka had burned it to ashes by biting it with his fangs. According to the arrangement of destiny, Kashyapa was diverted by Takshaka and the inevitable took place. Text 13. While all the living beings all over the universe looked on, the body of the great self-realized saint among the kings, was immediately burned to ashes by the fire of the snake's poison. Text 14. Translation. There arose a terrible cry of lamentation in all the directions on the earth and in the heavens, and all the demigods, demons, human beings, and other creatures were astonished. Text 15. Translation. Kettle drums sounded in the regions of the demigods, and the celestial Gandharvas and Apsaras sang. The demigods showered flowers and spoke of words of praise. Purport. Although lamenting at first, all learned persons, including the demigods, soon realized that a great soul had gone back home, back to Godhead. This was certainly a cause of celebration. Text 16. Translation. Hearing that his father had been fatally bitten by the snake bird, Maharaj Janamajaya became extremely angry and had Brahmanas perform a mighty sacrifice in which he offered all the snakes in the world into the sacrificial fire. Text 17. Translation. When Takshaka saw even the most powerful serpents being burned in the blazing fire of that snake sacrifice, he was overwhelmed with fear and approached Lord Indra for shelter. Text 18. Translation. When King Janamejaya did not see Takshaka entering this sacrificial fire, he said to the Brahmanas, "Why is not Takshaka, the lowest of all serpents, burning in this fire?" Text 19. Translation. The Brahmanas replied, "O best of kings, the snake Takshaka has not fallen into the fire because he is being protected by Indra, whom he has approached for shelter. Indra is holding him back from the fire." Text 20. Translation. The intelligent king Janamejaya, hearing these words, replied to the priest, "Then, my dear Brahmanas, why not make Takshaka fall into the fire, along with his protector Indra?" Text 21. Translation. Hearing this, the priest then chanted this mantra for offering Takshaka together with Indra as an oblation into the sacrificial fire. "O Takshaka, fall immediately into this fire together with Indra and his entire host of demigods." Text 22. When Lord Indra, along with his airplane and Takshaka, was suddenly thrown from his position by these insulting words of the Brahmanas, he became very disturbed. Text 23. Translation. Brihaspati, the son of Angira Muni, seeing Indra falling from the sky in his airplane along with Takshaka, approached King Janamejaya and spoke to him as follows. Text 24. Translation. "O king among men, it is not fitting that this king of snakes meet death at your hands, for he has drunk the nectar of the immortal demigods. Consequently, he is not subject to the ordinary symptoms of old age and death." Text 25. Translation. The life and death of an embodied soul and his destination in the next life are caused by himself through his own activity. Therefore, O king, no other agent is actually responsible for creating one's happiness and distress. Purport. Although King Parikshit apparently died by the bite of Takshaka, it was Lord Krishna himself who brought the king back to home, back to Godhead. Brihaspati wanted the young king Janamejaya to see things from the spiritual point of view. Text 26. Translation. When a conditioned soul is killed by snakes, thieves, fire, lightning, hunger, disease, or anything else, he is experiencing the reaction to his own past work. Purport. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, King Parikshit obviously was not suffering the reaction of past karma. As a great devotee, he was personally brought back home, back to Godhead, by the Lord. Text 27. Translation. Therefore, my dear king, please stop this sacrificial performance, which was initiated with the intent of doing harm to others. Many innocent snakes have already been burnt to death. Indeed, all persons must suffer the unforeseen consequences of their past activities. Purport. Brihaspati here admits that although the snakes appear to be innocent, but by the Lord's arrangement, they were also being punished for previous vicious activities. Text 28. Translation. Sutta Gosvami continued, advised in this manner, Maharaj Janamejaya replied, "So be it." Honoring the words of great sage, he desisted from the performance of snake sacrifice and worshipped Brihaspati, the most eloquent of sages. Text 29. Translation. This is indeed the Supreme Lord Vishnu's illusory energy, which is unstoppable and difficult to perceive. Although the individual spirit souls are part and parcel of the Lord, through the influence of this illusory energy, they are bewildered by their identification with various material bodies. Purport. The illusory energy of Lord Vishnu is so powerful that even the illustrious son of King Parikshit was temporarily misdirected. Because he was a devotee of Lord Krishna, however, his bewilderment was quickly rectified. On the other hand, an ordinary materialistic person, without the special protection of the Lord, plummets to the depths of material ignorance. Factually, the materialistic persons are not interested in the protection of Lord Vishnu. Therefore, their complete ruination is inevitable. Text in 30 and 31. Translation. But there exists a supreme reality in which the illusory energy cannot fearlessly dominate. Thinking, quote, I can control this person because he is deceitful, unquote. In that highest reality, there is no illusory argumentative philosophies. Rather, there are true students of spiritual science constantly engaged in the authorized spiritual investigation. And in that supreme reality, there is no manifestation of the material mind, which functions in terms of alternating decision and doubt. Creating material products, their subtle causes, and the goals of enjoyment attained by their utilization do not exist there. Furthermore, in that supreme reality, there is no conditioned spirit covered by false ego and the three modes of nature. That reality excludes everything limited or limiting. One who is wise should therefore stop the waves of material life and enjoy within that supreme truth. Purport. The illusory energy of the Lord, Maya, can freely exert her influence over those who are hypocritical, deceitful, and disobedient to the laws of God. Since the personality of Godhead is free of all material qualities, Maya herself becomes fearful in his presence, as stated by Lord Brahma. Vilajyamanaya yasya sthatum ukshapate muya. Quote, Maya herself is ashamed to stand face to face with the Supreme Lord. Unquote. In the supreme spiritual reality, useless academic wrangling is completely absent, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto, 4th chapter, text number 31. Yat shaktayo vadatam vadinam vai vivada samvada bhuvo bhavanti kurvanti chaisham muhur atma mohan tasmai namo nanta gunaya mumne. Quote, let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the all-pervading Supreme Personality of Godhead, who possesses unlimited transcendental qualities. Acting from within the cores of the hearts of all philosophers who propagate various views, he causes them to forget their own souls, while sometimes agreeing and sometimes disagreeing among themselves. Thus, he creates within this material world a situation in which they are unable to come to a conclusion. I offer my obeisances unto him. Unquote. Text 32. Translation. Those who desire to give up all that is not essentially real move systematically. Translation. Those who desire to give up all that is not essentially a real move. Those who desire to give up all that is not essentially real move systematically by negative discrimination of the extraneous to the supreme position of Lord Vishnu. Giving up petty materialism, they offer their love exclusively to the absolute truth within their hearts and embrace the highest truth in fixed meditation. Purport. The words yan neti, netiti, atat, utshishkrishavaha indicate the process of negative discrimination, by which one engaged in the search for essential absolute truth systematically rejects all that is superfluous, superficial, and relative. Throughout the world, people have gradually rejected the ultimate validity of political, social, and even religious truth. Because they lack Krishna consciousness, they remain bewildered and cynical. However, as clearly stated here, Param Padam Vaishnavam Amananti Tat. Those who actually desire perfect knowledge must not reject the non essential, but must also ultimately understand the essential spiritual reality called Param Padam Vaishnavam, the supreme destination, the abode of Lord Vishnu. Padam indicates both the status and the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which can be understood only by those who give up petty materialism and adopt the position of Ananya Sahodharani, exclusive love for the Lord. Such exclusive love is not narrow-minded or sectarian, because all living entities, being within the Lord, are automatically served when one directly serves the Supreme Entity. This process of rendering highest service to the Lord and to all living entities constitutes the science of Krishna consciousness, which is taught throughout Srimad Bhagavatam. Text 33. Translation. Such devotees come to understand the supreme transcendental situation of the personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, because they are no longer polluted by the conception of I and mine, which are based on body and home. Text 34. Translation. One should tolerate all insults and never fail to show proper respect to any person. Avoiding identification with the material body, one should not create enmity with anyone. Text 35. Translation. I offer my obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the invincible Lord Sri Krishna. Simply by meditating upon his lotus feet, I have been able to study and appreciate this great literature. Text 36. Translation. Shaunaka Rishi said, O gentle Suta, please narrate to us how Paila and the other greatly intelligent disciples of Srila Vyasadeva, who are known as the standard authorities of Vedic wisdom, spoke and edited the Vedas. Text 37. Translation. Suta Goswami said, O Brahman, first the subtle vibration of the transcendental sound appeared from the sky of the heart of the most elevated Lord Brahma, whose mind was perfectly fixed in spiritual realization. One can perceive this subtle vibration when one stops all external hearing. Because Srimad Bhagavatam is the supreme Vedic literature, the sages headed by Shaunaka decided to trace out its source. Text 38. Translation. By virtue of the subtle form of the Vedas, O Brahmana, mystic sages cleanse their hearts of all contamination caused by impurity of substance, activity, and doer, and thus they attain freedom from repeated birth and death. Text 39. Translation. From that transcendental subtle vibration arose the Omkar, composed of three sounds. The Omkar has unseen potencies and manifests automatically within a purified heart. It is the representation of the Absolute Truth in all three of his phases: the Supreme Personality, the Supreme Soul, and the Supreme Impersonal Truth. Text 40 and 41. Translation. This Omkar, ultimately non-material and imperceptible, is heard by the Supersoul without his possessing material ears or any other material senses. The entire expanse of Vedic sound is elaborated from Omkar, which appears from the soul within the sky of the heart. It is the direct designation of the self-originating absolute truth, the Supersoul, and is the secret essence and the eternal seed of all Vedic hymns. Purport. The senses of a sleeping person do not function until he has awakened. Therefore, when a sleeping person is awakened by a noise, one may ask, who heard the noise? The word Shukta Shotre in this verse indicates that the Supreme Lord within the heart hears the sound and awakens the sleeping living entities. The Lord's sensory activities always function on a superior level. Ultimately, all sounds great. Within the sky and in the internal region of the heart, there is a type of sky meant for the vibration of Vedic sounds. The seed or source of all Vedic sounds is Omkar. This is confirmed by the Vedic statement Om iti etat brahmano nedishtam nama. The full elaboration of the Vedic seed sound is Srimad Bhagavatam, the greatest Vedic literature. Text 42. Translation. Omkar exhibited the three original sounds of the alphabet A, U, and Ma. These three, O most eminent descendant of Bhrigu, sustain all the different threefold aspects of the material existence, including the three modes of nature. The names of the Rig, Yajur, and Samvedas, the goals known as the Bhur, Bhuva, and Swar planetary systems, and the three functional platforms called waking consciousness, sleep, and deep sleep. Text 43. Translation. From that Omkar, Lord Brahma created the sounds of the alphabet, the vowels, consonants, semivowels, sibilants, and others, distinguished by such features as long and short measure. Text 44. Translation. All-powerful Brahma made use of his collection of sounds to produce from his four faces the four Vedas, which appear together with the sacred Omkar and the seven Vyahrati invocations. His intention was to propagate the process of Vedic sacrifice according to the different functions performed by the priests of each of the four Vedas. Text 45. Translation. Brahma taught these Vedas to his sons, who were great sages among the Brahmanas. The experts in the art of Vedic recitation thus in turn took the role of Acharya and imparted the Vedas to their own sons. Text 46. Translation. In this way, throughout the cycles of 4 ages, generations after generation of disciples, all firmly fixed in their spiritual vows, have received these Vedas by disciplined succession. At the end of each Dwapar Yuga, the Vedas are edited into separate divisions by the eminent sages. Text 47. Translation. Observing that people in general were diminished in their lifespan, strength, and intelligence by the influence of time, great sages took inspiration from the personality of Godhead sitting within their hearts and systematically divided the Vedas. Text 48 and 49. Translation. O Brahman, in the present age of Vaivashvata Manu, the leaders of the universe, led by Brahma and Shiva, requested the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the protector of all the worlds, to save the principles of religion. And O most fortunate Shaka, the Almighty Lord, exhibiting a divine spark of a portion of his plenary portion, then appeared in the womb of Satyavati as a son of Parashar. In this form, named Krishna Dvaipaya and Vyasa, divided the one Veda into 4. Text 50. Translation. Srila Vyasadeva separated the mantras of Rig, Atharva, Yajur, and Samaveda into 4 divisions, just as one sorts out a mixed collection of jewels into piles. Thus he composed 4 distinct Vedic literatures. Purport. When Lord Brahma first spoke the 4 Vedas with his 4 mouths, the mantras were mixed together like an unsorted collection of various types of jewels. Srila Vyasadeva sorted the Vedic mantras into 4 divisions, which is called Samhidas, which thus became the recognizable Rig, Atharva, Yajur, and Sama Vedas. Text 51. Tasha. Translation. The most powerful and the intelligent Vyasadeva called 4 of his disciples, O Brahman, and entrusted to each of them one of these 4 Samhitas. Text 52 and 53. Translation. Srila Vyasadeva taught the first Samhita, the Rig Veda, to Paila and gave this collection the name Mahavrachaha. To the sage Vaishamapayana, he spoke the collection of Yajurmantras named Nigada. He taught the Samveda mantras designated as Chandogya Samhita to Jaimini and spoke the Atharva Veda to his dear disciple Sumantu. Text 54 to 56. Translation. After dividing his Samhita into two parts, the wise Paila spoke it to Indra Pramiti and Bhaskala. Bhaskala further divided his collection into four parts, O Bhargava, and instructed them to his disciples, Bodhya, Yajnavalkya, Parashara, and Agnimitra. Indra Pramiti, the self-controlled sage, taught his Samhita to the learned mystic Mandukya, whose disciple Devamitra later passed down the divisions of Rig Veda to Saubhari and others. Purport. According to Srila Swami, Mandukya was the son of Indra Pramiti, from whom he received the Vedic knowledge. Text 57. Translation. The son Mandukya, named Shakalya, son of Mandukya, named Shakalya, divided his own collection into 5, entrusting one subdivision each to Vatsya, Mudgala, Shalya, Gokhalya, and Shishira. Text 58. Translation. The sage Jatu Karnya was also a disciple of Shakalya, and after dividing the Samhita he received from Shakalya into 3 parts, he added a 4th section, a Vedic glossary. He taught one of these parts to each of the 4 disciples, Balaka, the second Paila, Javala, and Viraja. Text 59. Translation. Bhaskali assembled the Valakhilya Samhita, a collection from all the branches of Rig Veda, and this collection was received by Valayani, Bhajya, and Kashara. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, Valayani, Bhajya, and Kashara belong to the Daitya community. Text 16. Translation. Thus, these various Samhitas of the Rig Veda were maintained through the disciplic succession by these saintly Brahmins. Simply by hearing of the distribution of Vedic hymns, one will be freed from all sins. Text 61. Translation. The disciples of Vaishamapayana became authorities in Atharva Veda, and they were known as Charakas because they executed strict vows to free their guru from his sin of killing a Brahman. Text 62. Translation. Once Yajnavalkya, one of the disciples of Vaishamapayana, said, O Master, how much benefit will be derived from the feeble endeavors of these weak disciples of yours? I will personally perform some outstanding penance. Translate. Text 63. Translation. Just thus, the spiritual master Vaishampayana became very angry and said, Go away from here. Enough of you, O disciple who insults the Brahmanas. Furthermore, you must immediately give back everything I have taught you. Sri Vaishamapayana was angry because one of his disciples, Yajnavalkya, was insulting the other disciples, who were after all qualified Brahmanas. Just as a father is disturbed when one son mistreats the father's other children, the spiritual master is very displeased if a proud disciple insults or mistreats the Guru's other disciples. Text 64 and 65. Translation. Yajnavalkya, the son of Devavrata, then vomited the mantra of the Yajurveda and went away from there. The assembled disciples, looking greedily upon these Yajur hymns, assumed the form of partridges and picked them all up. The divisions of Yajurveda therefore became known as the most beautiful Tiriya Samhita, the hymns collected by the partridges. Pitiraha. Purport. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, it is improper for a Brahman to collect what has been vomited. And so the powerful Brahman disciples of Vaishampayana assumed the form of titiras, partridges, and collected the valuable mantras. Text 66. Translation. My dear Brahman Sonaka, Yajnavalkya then desired to find out the new Yajur mantras unknown to even to his spiritual master. With this in mind, he offered alternative worship to the powerful Lord of the Sun. Text 67. Translation. Sri Yajnavalkya said, I offer my respectful obeisance to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appearing as the sun. You are present as the controller of four kinds of living entities, beginning from Brahma and extending down to the blades of grass. Just as the sky is present, both inside and outside every living being, you exist within the hearts of all as the Supersoul and externally in the form of time. Just as the sky cannot be covered by the clouds present within it, you are never covered by any false material designation. By the flow of years which are made up of tiny fragments of time, called shanas, lovers, and nimeshas, you alone maintain this world, drying up the waters and giving them back as rain. This prayer is not offered to the Sun God as an independent or autonomous entity, but rather to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, represented by his powerful expansion as the solar deity. Text 68. O glowing one, O powerful Sun, Lord of the Sun, you are the chief of all demigods. I meditate with careful attention on your fiery glow, because for those who offer prayers to you 3 times daily, according to the Vedic method passed down through authorized disciplic succession, you burn away all sinful activities and all consequent suffering and even the original seed of desire. Text 69. Translation. You are present, personally present, as the indwelling Lord in the hearts of all moving and non-moving beings who depend completely on your shelter. Indeed, you animate their material minds, senses, and vital airs to act. Text 70. Translation. The world has been seized and swallowed by the python of darkness in its horrible mouth and has become unconscious as if dead. But the merciful glancing upon the sleeping people of the world, you raise them up with the gift of sight. Thus you are the most magnanimous. At the 3 sacred junctures of each day, you engage the pious in the path of ultimate good, inducing them to perform religious duties that situate them in their spiritual position. Purport. According to Vedic culture, the 3 higher classes of society, the intellectual, political, and mercantile sections, are formally connected with the spiritual master by initiation and receive the Gayatri mantra. This purifying mantra is chanted 3 times daily at sunrise, noon, and sunset. Auspicious moments for the performance of spiritual duties are calculated according to the sun's path in the sky. And this systematic scheduling of spiritual duties is here attributed to the sun as a representative of God. Text 71. Translation. Just like an earthly king, you travel about everywhere, spreading fear among the unholy as the powerful deities of the directions offer you in their folded palms, lotus flowers, and other respectful presentations. Text 72. Translation. Therefore, my Lord, I am prayerfully approaching your lotus feet, which are honored by the spiritual masters of the 3 worlds, because I hope to receive from you the mantras of Yajurveda unknown to anyone else. Text 73. Translation. Shuddha Gosvami said, satisfied by such glorification, the powerful sun god assumed the form of a horse and presented to the sage Yajnavalkya Yajur mantras previously unknown in human society. Text 74. Translation. From these countless hundreds of mantras of Yajur Veda, the powerful sage compiled 15 new branches of Vedic literature. These became known as Vajashenai Samhita because they were produced from the hairs of the horse mane and they were accepted in disciplic succession by the followers of Kanva, Madhyadina, and other rishis. Text 75. Translation. Jaimini Rishi, authority of Samveda, had a son named Sumantu. And the son of Sumantu was Shudvan. The sage Jaimini spoke to each of them a different part of Samaveda Samhita.
लीजिए आरती। हरे कृष्ण। आरती लीजिए आरती। हरे कृष्ण।
सखी आकर कह रही है, श्याम सुंदर तुम ही व्याकुल नहीं हो, तुम्हारे लिए श्री किशोरी जी भी अत्यंत व्याकुल है। कैसी अवस्था है उनकी। नंदति चंदन बिंदु किरण मनु बिंदति खेद मधीरम व्याल निलय मिलनेन करल विभ कलयति मलय समीरम माधव मनसिज विशिख बया दिव भावनया त्वयि लीना साबिरे तब दीना दीना